Welcome, everyone, to the Epic Mind Visions podcast. Today, I have my good friend Matt Xian with me. Matt is an amazing friend and extraordinary creator of many things. He is an extraordinary DJ. I've listened to his DJ sets like dozens of times live. It's amazing to be in his resonance and frequency when he is on the decks. And I wanted to welcome him here so that he can kind of drop in with me and tell me about what's live for him, what he's doing in his life, and where he's going with everything that he's creating. Welcome to the podcast, Matt Xian.
What's up, brother? Thanks
How
for
are you,
having
man?
me. I'm great.
Yeah.
I'm great.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to interview you. You know, you have your own podcast going. And how long have you had that podcast?
It's probably going on 4 years. Yeah.
Wow. How many episodes?
I'm about 90 episodes in.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
cool. And I had the honor of being on the podcast a couple of years ago and really appreciated the way that you drop into so many esoteric topics and just different things that in the metaphysical realm and plant medicine and tell me a little bit about the podcast so my listeners can go over there and take a listen to what you're doing.
For sure, man. Yeah, it was inspired by my friend Michael Phillip, the Third Eye Drop show, who I was just a big fan of for years, before I started my show. And, I touch on a lot of different things than he does, but I just loved this kind of regular programming of this psychedelic, the mind bending, the philosophy that he would have coming out. And every time an episode would drop, I was super stoked to hear it. So, I was like, you know what, this is feeling in resonance for me to try to do my own show. So I actually invited Michael on my show's episode number one. And
Wow.
yeah, we did that and it was fun. It was great. And really I wanted to connect with a lot of local artists because in San Antonio, it's I don't know, like I feel like the psychedelic community is very small and the spiritual community, whatever it is not that large in San Antonio. It's certainly present, but it's not anything like an Austin or, like a California or, these Asheville, like these places where it's just like brimming and there's a lot of activity in those spaces. So I interviewed on my first season, which actually I do a seasonal format. So it's not like every week. Like how you'll watch a show on HBO or Netflix or whatever, like they do a season and then it goes away for a while and then it returns. For me, I've always liked that because it gives me a chance to like look forward to a new thing to come out. So, and I'm an experimental person, so I went ahead and decided to do a seasonal format. But for my first season, other than Michael and a couple of people that were remote, a lot of what I did was local. So I interviewed local artists, visionary artists, other musicians, people who are just interested in spirituality. I even had some Krishna monks on who are local to the area to ask them, what is it like to be a monk, So it started like that, I just wanted to talk about what was interesting to me. Again, spirituality, psychedelics, philosophy, but from my angle. And after the initial season, I started booking a lot more people that were, across the world. So a lot less local things in the following season, but certainly, it's been a through line. I'll check in with locals here and there, but yeah, I've been expanding kind of who I'm talking to in the later seasons. I just finished season number 6. I'm currently booking for the next season, and that'll be dropping later this year. So,
What
the
kinds of topics do you have in mind for the next season, or do you do it that way?
sometimes I do. I think this season is going to be a little more about integration and a little more about using creativity to integrate these spiritual ideas and these
I love that.
psychedelic experiences, because yeah, a lot of the past stuff is kind of trip reporty. It's kind of like, tell me your craziest trip with X, Y, or Z, whether it be ayahuasca or, whatever it might be. And I got a lot of kind of trip report videos on my YouTube that I kind of pulled out of the podcast. And I think that's kind of a popular space online, which is, one reason I converted my YouTube to a lot of trip reports, and but as I've gone further along the path, I think, and I'm sure we all hear the harping on integration. It
Yeah,
is it is super important. It is super
it's
important.
very important. That's what I was about to say. The world needs more integration right now,
Right.
it seems like. And I'm definitely in that category where I think I've done a pretty good job of integration, but
Mhm.
there's always more. There's always more opportunity to bring the lessons that we learn when we're doing any of these modalities into our lives and to be living them and becoming them in real time instead of it just being a concept or a report on what happened.
Mhm.
The integration part of it, I think, is key if we're really ultimately raising the vibration of humanity. So
Yep.
uh, I'll be stoked to hear some of those episodes as you go into it and yeah, see where that goes. Because I think
Mhm.
the medicine community in general has really expanded over the last few years. And I hear people talking about integration all the time and more the lack of it rather than we have enough. So,
Right.
yeah. So,
Exactly.
as far as your creativity, man, you are a prolific artist. What all do you do in the creative realms? That's one of the things that, really interests me about you is that, I don't really consider myself a creative in any of the traditional art forms. I consider my entrepreneurial journey to be that's where I bring the art together. But I've learned over the years that, creative expression can lead to expansion and, like you said, integration. So,
Right.
what do you do? Like, what all do you do? I know you do so many things. Some
Right.
of them I don't even know about.
Yeah. Yeah. It honestly is a gift and a curse to be so interested in so many aspects of creativity. For example, when someone chooses one single thing they're going to do, like let's just say be a musician, I think you're going to advance quicker in that than spreading yourself thin. This is something I've been learning slowly over the last handful of years, but I have been called to so many different creative paths. I don't know why, but I just get interested in them and I go off on these tangents in life.
Oh, you're creative at your core.
I guess so. So it all started as a kid using a camcorder, the family camcorder, just to film what was going on with me and my friends, make little movies. I remember the first thing I ever filmed was Independence Day, that alien film. With it was me and my friends pretending aliens were on Earth, and we were literally like 5 or 8 years old or something like that. And um, I knew I loved filming and there was no editing back then because it was all on a tape, but we would just
Right.
rewind the tape and shoot it again if the scene didn't go how we wanted, and then we'd all watch the little movie and laugh and think, "Oh, how much fun we had today," type of thing. And later that turned into kind of a talk show thing. I had somehow acquired a tape recorder where we'd go on long car rides for vacations or family events or whatever, and I would just like have a little talk show in the back seat of the car and record myself and listen back to it. Um, and that was about until I was getting to be a teenager. I was constantly filming and I was constantly recording with this tape recorder. Conversations with friends. Actually, I remember I was super into wrestling when I was a kid, like when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and we would set the camera out on our looking towards our trampoline, play like the wrestling outro music and like walk out like there's a big crowd, and we would like jump on the
Yeah,
trampoline like body
that's
slamming
cool.
each other, and then go watch our little mock pay-per-view after, and we're just ha kids having fun. um that turned eventually into skateboarding, and becoming the official like skateboarding video guy who would help all my friends make their sponsor me tapes. We were super influenced by the game Tony Hawk, and
Oh yeah, Tony Hawk. He's
yeah,
big. He's a big name.
oh yeah, and in the game, the storyline's always like, "Hey, you're a street skater, but you want to be legit. You want to be sponsored, so you got to make a sponsor me video. So these skate shops will send you decks and boards and blah blah blah." So, I started filming all my friends who were really good at skateboarding, making them skate videos, And again, we would just like check them out after we filmed it and edited it and put some music to it. And it was always a great time. And people would call on me all the time because I had a camera and was always stoked to pull up, film people doing stuff.
So
And
that led you into like, because you do a lot of editing now, right? Or you have in
correct.
over the past few years. What do those projects look like?
Oh yeah. So I want to get there real quick because I'm gonna keep expressing real briefly how video and talk turned into music because essentially I became friends with really musical guys through high school who had drum sets, who had keyboards, who had guitars, who had basses, who had amps, and we would just mess around in the this playroom, I guess it was like a rehearsal room, and I became slowly infatuated with the art of making music. So from film, I really like got super passionate about music, and it became like almost my full force effort for a number of years there. But of course, music is tied with video because of music videos, because of recording your live shows so you could watch them back. And so all the while I was really full force in music and I was still doing video. So essentially, how video became more of a profession for me was through working with Mitch Schultz, the director of DMT, the Spirit Molecule in Austin. Now, this came at about age 20 after I'd had a handful of psychedelic experiences and became just super interested in what was going on there. I saw the film DMT, the Spirit Molecule, as many of us had. It was on Netflix, and it was just like the biggest, best, dopest documentary on psychedelics I had ever seen. So I ended up becoming a follower of that page on Facebook. And not long after becoming a follower of that page, I saw a post that said, "Hey, Austin." And I was like, "Oh, they're in Austin. That's cool. I didn't even know that. I was just a fan of the movie." But they were like, "Hey, Austin, we're looking for interns. Uh, we need these couple of things. If you've ever worked in video, hit us up." And I was like, I'm very called to this. And I hit them up immediately. And I got an interview the next week and essentially got an internship with Mitch Schultz, the director. And
Wow, super cool.
yeah, so he sat me down in his studio, showed me the ropes, showed me how to edit more professionally. I'd already been editing, but I didn't really edit for a studio, I was just editing at home as a kid, more or less. And he showed me how to categorize things, how to cut things, how to use better software, Premiere Pro, and do all this like more professional level editing. And that turned into me working with a lot of his colleagues, a lot of his friends, a lot of people hearing like, oh, like Mitch has got this video guy who's helping him out and we need help too. And, I was super like in this intern mindset, which was like, I don't really care to get paid. I just want to get experience.
Hmm.
And so I was working with as many people as that would take me on. And I started learning the ropes more or less on how to video edit, how to use better cameras. And yeah, that turned into a career more or less and something I still do. So for brands, particularly my brother had founded Sheath, which is a men's apparel brand specializing in active underwear. And that's kind of my day job
I know it
gig.
well.
Yeah, that's kind of my day
I
job
wear
right
them
now.
often.
Yeah, man, they're awesome. I mean, shout out to Sheath,
Yeah, big
sheathunderwear.com.
shout out.
Super comfortable. So I help them with social media and video editing, just all around creative direction, photography, this and that, helping get the brand out. And it's a lot of fun, man. And so video has kind of been like my bread and butter as far as like paying the bills, this and that. But music has been like my passion. Um, but as well, I've had a long dream to be a filmmaker, and I've dabbled in creating films and creating projects in that nature. And you mentioned it earlier on, like one of really my most recent film projects was Myths in Mind with Eric Godsey, which
I love that video. I think I've watched it like 10 times.
thank you, man.
Sometimes I'll think about it, I'll just put it on and watch it again because it's just the visuals and Eric's voice and the
Oh yeah,
concepts and everything. I
absolutely.
love that mythology. He's the myth master.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I became a big fan of his podcast through Third Eye Drops, who I mentioned earlier. He was a frequent guest on the show, and every time he would say something, my mind was getting blown. So I was just
Yeah.
like, I love this
Yeah,
guy.
his ability to bring concepts together from a mythological standpoint is unparalleled from anything I've
Mhm.
heard.
Absolutely. Super recommend the Myths That Make Us podcast. That's Eric's
Yeah,
show.
highly recommend that as well.
Yeah. And I had a friend, an animator who I was working with through Time Wheel and Sheath, which Time Wheel, see, I was doing so much stuff, which is kind of crazy, but Time Wheel is like my record label slash creative studio. And I was working with my friend Nate, who goes by Intruvia, and he was like, "Yo, I want to work with Eric too. Maybe we should do something with him together." And I was like, "Dude, what if we make an animated project, like bringing some of his podcasts to life?" And more or less, it was inspired by Duncan Trussell's show, Midnight Gospel.
Yeah, love that
So
show too.
yeah, me too. And we were just like, "Hey, let's try it," you know. And we started with one episode, and we were like, "Oh, let's do two, let's do three," and it turned into like a three mini episode series type of thing. That we hit Eric up with like a pitch deck and said like, "Hey, man, this is what we're thinking. Like, we really love your show. These are some of Nate's projects and people he's worked with, and this is how we could maybe pull this all together." And he was very grateful that we were so inspired by his work, and he was like, "Of course, dude, let's do it." And so much love and gratitude to Eric for being willing to take that on and
Where do I find those?
support
I've
us.
never seen those. Are those on your YouTube channel or something, or on his?
That's what Myths and Mine turned into. It
Oh, I
started as
see.
like
Okay,
three
I got it.
separate episodes, and we just kind of brought them all together into like one video type of
Amazing.
situation. But that was my most recent kind of what I call an art film. And I've been dreaming up a couple of other films that I think are going to be in the works and in more of a longer timeline because they're just quite big ideas.
Bigger projects. Yeah, the last time we spoke a few months ago in depth, you were talking about this new creative project that you had that's more in the filmmaking, you know, kind of from that perspective, like bigger.
Mhm.
What
It's
is what's that all about?
it's honestly super big, but it's crazy. But so since being a kid, I do not know why I've had alien dreams frequently, like dreams of aliens coming to Earth, dreams of UFOs, dreams of being abducted, dreams of fucking them destroying our planet, but also sometimes being super peaceful. It's very strange. I don't know what is going on in my dream realm, but I have these extremely vivid dreams that are straight out of like a Hollywood movie. Like you couldn't even, I don't even know. Like this is why it's a longer idea, is because like how can I feasibly do this type of Hollywood level, Michael Bay or freaking Steven Spielberg, War of the Worlds, all this type. It's that type of film. You know what I mean? It
Right.
spent a lifetime in the making, but when I have these dreams, I write them down. I remember them. I can recall many of them even now. And
Wow.
I'm just like, man, these scenes are so freaking wild. I don't want them to go to waste. So I have this kind of like longer goal to tie those scenes together and create like this alien um, coming to Earth film that is actually going to tie in with psychedelics and how psychedelics may help us communicate with aliens. So,
Fascinating.
yeah, I don't
I think
have like
that's
a,
happening in real time, actually. I mean, I
yeah.
know in my own psychedelic experiences, I don't know that I was necessarily communicating with aliens, but I was certainly communicating with ancestors. And, those energies coming through are so powerful and visceral in the moment that it kind of like clicked something in my mind that I know there's some piece of reality to it. It's
Mm,
not just some vision thing, it's like the energy is actually coming through. And as far as like aliens, I like to think that they are peaceful and they're watching over us. And I guess there could be good and bad, sort of extraterrestrial or off-planet being energies out there, which there is the light and the dark and all of that. But I like to think that, they're not stepping in because they can't interfere with our own free will, and we have to kind of live it out. Like we're the experiment on this planet as these incarnations of life force energy,
Right.
individuated, So
Yeah.
that'd be
Yeah.
a fascinating movie to produce, to
Oh yeah.
see, watch. If you need, I don't know, I was gonna say an extra, but if you need like an alien, I can probably portray an alien.
That'd be awesome, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
it's a longer term thing. I'm saying next decade or something. It's definitely not currently in the works, but it is like something I've dreamed of since I was being a kid. It's like, dude, I gotta do something with all these crazy wild scenes that come to me in my sleep.
yeah, yeah. That sounds like it. Sounds like you're kind of like um, taking all of that in so that you can mold it into a creative project. And again, just
Yeah.
back to like your prolific creativity. I mean, that's just the video side of it. Like, what
Mhm.
can explain to the audience a little bit about the music side because you have a whole nother realm going on there.
Right, right. And that's something I've been trying to focus more on, honestly, is music, because it is something that I have more of a history doing. I played with a band for 5, 6 years, doing a lot of activity in the band space in San Antonio, in Austin.
What are your instruments?
So I started with keyboard, and then that turned into synthesizers like Korgs and what are they called? Moogs and these type of
Right.
keyboard instruments that just make more crazy sounds. And then kind of by default, I became the band's singer. I didn't really intend to be a singer, but none of us really wanted to do it. And I was kind of like, I'll step up and I'll try to sing. And I was really bad for many years, but slowly but surely I got pretty decent at my pitch and my key and my range. And so I became a singer. And yeah, I sang on we did 3 albums as my band. It was called Something Fiction. It's kind of like in a hiatus right now, but it's not like dead. I mean, I still hang out with the bandmates. They're some of my best friends. We just have all been doing our own kind of solo projects recently. So the music stuff started with being in a band. We did that as hard as we could, tried to make a name for ourselves, kind of did, at least locally. And then I slowly was getting more and more interested in electronic music and started doing like solo producer stuff. And I released a number of singles and EPs as Xian, which is my artist alias, Xian. And when you create electronic music, more or less the best way, in my mind, to play that live is as a DJ. So DJing just kind of fell into my natural arsenal of performance and started doing that more often, started getting my deck and my DJ equipment all squared away and learning how to use the softwares to DJ, primarily Ableton's what I use, and also Ableton to produce. And just started kind of going as hard as I was with the band, but as a solo DJ, which led me to working a lot in Austin because Austin has a really thriving music scene. And as well, my love of psychedelics brought me to our mutual friends, Temple of Sacred Womb, who were looking for an ecstatic dance DJ. And I was like, you know what? I've never done ecstatic dance, but I know what it is, and I'm super inspired to give that a go. And so, actually, one of the founders, Clem, had pointed me towards an ecstatic dance workshop. So I took like a workshop in how to do ecstatic dance and how to do these separate waves. I think it was called the 5 rhythms
Hmm.
is what the kind of
Yeah,
like
I've heard of that.
yeah, the template of how to make a DJ set and an ecstatic dance set happen.
So what year was that when you started? Was that 2020 during COVID? Like right around that time, or was that before?
It might have been just before COVID is when it started, and then it flourished after COVID.
Right. Yeah, because that's when I met you. That's how I met you, was through
Hmm.
Temple of the Sacred Womb, through those
Yeah.
ecstatic dance experiences. I moved
Hmm.
to Austin about mid 2020. Entire city shut down. Temple of Sacred Womb having ecstatic dances, regularly.
Hmm.
So that was something that I could get out and do and get into that expressive kind of, you know, body practice, which
Right.
I had done some in California before I moved here, but had just really scratched the surface of it. So dropping in with you and your sets, Time Wheel, amazing. And I felt like, and you and I talked about it a little bit about your process of how you create your sets and things like that.
Hmm.
But it was it is very meditative in a
Hmm.
way of just how the rhythmic expression of the music that you're bringing to the crowd is it's like I don't know if it's mastery because I don't have enough experience with DJs like you,
Hmm.
but what you were doing was very, it called me,
Hmm.
in a very profound way, and it's like I've probably experienced your sets consistently more than any other DJ around or anything like that. So
Hmm.
it's like I have the most experience with you as a DJ.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a phenomenal time because, like I say, everything was shut down. Everybody was, freaky about getting together. And we were just like, no, we're just having static dance. There's like 100 people out here dancing around,
Yeah, dude.
like slaying the decks. And
I
it was
loved it.
all just beautiful because it needed to happen. We needed that community and connection. So how do you develop those sets or create those waves that you're talking about? Like, what's that
Hmm.
process look like for you? Because I know you're a heavy meditator. Like you're
Hmm.
not a noob or a stranger to those types of practices, and I know that that comes through in your music. And the point is that I personally I can feel that.
Yeah,
I can feel it. It resonates, and it's like it's a beautiful thing.
absolutely. Yeah, so this goes back a little to my early psychedelic experiences, which led me to spirituality and spiritual practice, which took me into the realms of yoga and meditation. And this is, just it's not a main thing that I do or that people really know me for. It's just kind of a private practice. I do occasional events where I'll get a handful of people together, or maybe sometimes a larger group together to meditate, to do some yoga together, just hold that space. But yeah, so I became super interested in practice in that practice, and that led me to a whole realm of music that I really didn't know about before. Like my early electronic music taste was kind of industrial. It was kind of Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada, a lot of artists from the Warp record label, Flying Lotus, these types of artists that they're certainly like out there, but it wasn't really medicine music or like super yogic tone, let's say. So as I was getting more into yoga, of course, I was looking for music to do it to, and I was like getting way more experienced in these artists that there's a lot of crossover in the psychedelic and the spiritual realms in this world of yoga. Desert Dwellers, Liquid
Yeah, love those
Bloom.
guys. Love it.
Yeah, later on I got introduced to Savage, who actually became a good friend, which is really cool. And
Yeah, I
gravi
watched that set that he did in what was it, Lightning, Costa Rica? What was that festival in?
Envision.
Envision. Yeah, yeah. I watched
Absolutely.
that set. I have that projector. Remember that projector I loaned you guys that one
Yep.
time? I
Yep.
have that on my wall. I set it up once in a while and watch that Savage set. That was amazing.
Dude, he killed that. He killed
Yeah,
that. I saw that set
that
for
was
the
epic.
first time on a little bit of heart medicine, and it freaking blew me away. I was like, I had a straight up spiritual awakening to that set.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I heard him on your podcast talking about it.
mhm.
That's how I found out about it. And he was talking about the process of how he got pulled into it and got the opportunity to do it. It was so amazing.
Absolutely. 100%. So, yeah, um, artists like all of those guys I mentioned, Desert Dwellers, Liquid Bloom, Savage, Parangi, these types of people and there's so many more artists than just them. They were just like the first ones I was becoming aware of as I was looking for like yoga music or meditation music. Um, I just started going down the rabbit hole as I'm very good at doing, and and discovering as many artists as I can, kind of making a collection of tracks that then there's like a curation process, which, is a studio night. We'd sit in front of the computer and audition different tracks, see how they lead into one another, see the different tempos, keys, BPMs, to just weave together a set that is like a journey, more or less. You
Mm,
start kind of slow, you start building the energy, you get to like a crescendo, you bring it back down again, you get to a second wave crescendo, you bring it back down again, you get to a third wave crescendo, and then you bring it all the way back down to a very chill, integrative. Let's return to the body. Let's return back to the space here after we went on this wild 2, 3 hour journey sometimes. So really, it's just, sitting in the studio, auditioning tracks, seeing how it feels to me and the group of guys I DJ with typically. And that's it, we just try it out. I've built a number of different sets. Of course, I've played some of them at multiple events and you kind of get sick of the set, so you want to build another one. But it's not that complicated, really. I think anyone can build a music set. It just takes sitting with it, listening to how songs come in and out of each other, how the tempos build in and out of each other, and it's super fun. And my favorite part about ecstatic dance is how into it everyone gets, and that's really the intention from the get-go, is to let the
right.
music move you.
Yeah, I know I
Now,
get into it.
right. So I come from the band world, which, we're up here like pouring our soul out, and you just see a bunch of empty stares and people holding beers and talking in the back. And,
Right.
I don't really love that. I wish they would give us,
Some
more
feedback.
attention for how much energy
Yeah,
we're
right.
putting out type of situation.
Right.
But in the ecstatic dance space, it feels like they're really, really giving you and the music the level of attention it deserves as art. And so that's what
Mm.
I freaking love about ecstatic dance and why I continue to do it.
Yeah, super cool. I know there have been times listening to your sets where the music is so, I don't want to say intense isn't the right word. It is intense, but it's like it just hits
Hmm.
so well. And I'm sometimes I imagine you like in your like right sitting right there at your computer, like tinkering. I was like, man, what was that dude thinking when this was going down?
Yeah.
Like it's so amazing. I can imagine the mind state that you're in to be
Hmm.
that confident about building these sets and these waves that you're talking about
Hmm.
and understanding the way people will react to the music itself. And again, just having that confidence to be putting that together in that way to create those waves. And the response that I've seen from people at your sets is always, super, super positive. And
Right.
I mean, everybody I know, they love to hear your sets. They love to experience your sets. And I'm
Yeah.
definitely a fan.
I'm so grateful, man. I'm so grateful. People enjoy it, because it's just fun.
It's just
It's
fun.
it's
Yeah,
straight up
just go
fun
out
for
there
me
and
to.
rip it up. Yeah.
Absolutely. It feels like a dharmic thing, like something I
Yeah.
was built for, which was to serve the medicine of music, And speaking to all the psychedelic stuff, as interested as I am in all of them, I've never been called to serve medicines, other than to myself and maybe my best friends or whatever.
Right.
But, whereas, we know a lot of people take on this. I want to become a facilitator. I want to become
Right.
a neo shaman or whatever it might be called. I feel like my way of giving back to that community is through the medicine of music. And
Yeah.
it's,
100%. Yeah. I
it,
don't feel
I'm just
called to
called to
that
that.
level of facilitation either. I will
Yeah.
be of service and be a part of ceremony if I can add something to the equation, but I'm certainly have no, desire to lead people through those processes. I'm certainly
Hmm.
not qualified to do that. And just to finish off the DJ part before we drop into some psychedelics, I mean, we've had the blessing of having these experiences in small group settings where there's a fire, a sacred fire, and I'm in a small group like in backyards around Austin and things like that. And I mean, it's just different when you pull that ecstatic dance experience out of building or wherever, you have to rent a place, and you're literally like dancing around a fire, like, in a tribal way with your tribe.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of value to that. I haven't seen that happen anywhere else. It's just such a magical experience of what Temple of the Sacred Womb particularly has created with that those experiences, and you guys being, sort of like the preferred DJ at those sets. Obviously, you guys
Hmm.
slay it every time. So just wanted
Yeah.
to add that nuance,
Oh,
that
yeah.
it is a very communal,
Right.
magical experience that I've not seen anywhere else or
Absolutely.
experienced.
Yeah, what Astra and Clem do, which are, the founders of that temple, is they just create a portal. They
Yeah,
create a safe space for people to be who they are, to show up authentically, experiencing whatever's alive for them right then and there. They say that they're a shadow inclusive community, which means, hey, if you're not feeling great tonight, don't put a mask on and pretend like everything's okay. Like, tell us how you actually are and dance it out. You know what I mean? And I love that. I feel like there needs to be more of that, because there's always this, we all know that there's this kind of mask we put on when we're in public, and we don't want to like sour the mood or whatever by saying like, actually, I've been going through a lot of shit, you know? So,
yeah, right.
but I love that we can just kind of purge those emotions out in this community, this safe community environment that they are so great at cultivating, and just be who we are, and then give each other a good hug, and let's dance it out. And we always feel better at the end of the night. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It definitely, moving energy through your body is, there's a lot of magic to that too. It definitely, things can get stuck, and just for me personally, it's not even that visceral. Like, oh, there's this thing. It's like I just know that I love to be expressive, physically expressive. That's the
mhm.
way I've always expressed, is physically,
Yeah,
through martial arts and just everything from linear activities like running and biking, where you're just like this, to, I did capoeira for many years, where there's a lot of spinning movements, and then
nice.
pulling all of that kind of physical activity into the ecstatic dance realm and expressing it that way, where I'm not thinking about necessarily, oh, I'm making these moves or I'm dancing. I'm just like, my body's just going with
Right.
the flow of the music, and I know that that's moving energy through my body, whether I have something that I'm going through in that particular moment, or it's just that consistency of tapping into that energy, so that I'm I'm consistently flowing at that level.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot about physical expression, and in the past it's so powerful in my system that it's just coming out some way. But now, through ecstatic dance, like understanding how it relates to music, matching and merging it with music and flowing with music and all of these other things, it's just it adds so many different layers that I was never aware of before. It was just like feeling this physical urge that just, it has to happen, and it's going to
Mhm.
happen through, I'm just going to go run, or I'm going to go run. Like, I ran a couple marathons before. I've been,
Nice.
rode bikes for a long time, where it was just this super like aggressive kind of style,
Mhm.
because I mean, those were my angry days. But since I've gotten over that, then it's like, okay, well, how do I express this more through vulnerability, love, connection with community, and joy, and express that physically? Like, that's something that, is fairly new to me, in the sense that I've been able to tap into that through ecstatic dance. So it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I was someone who had a ton of resistance towards dancing most of my life until probably
Yeah, me too.
my mid 20s. And I really just say that it was like a judgment, a self-judgment.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just
Likewise.
I was like, I'm not good at this. I don't know how to do this. People are gonna think I look weird. Like, I just not feeling free in my body. And it was actually through a psychedelic experience that I dropped the self-judgments, almost like myself went away, as they say, the ego death, or whatever. And I wouldn't call it a death. It was definitely more of a
Wounded.
ego softening. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Well, I guess there's a lot of different pieces of the ego. So,
Yeah.
some of it, the layers of it die away along the way. I agree. I've been through that process as well. But it's
Hmm.
always going to be there. There's always some level of
Yeah.
ego that's going to be in existence.
Absolutely, yeah. We get better at taming it. But yeah, once the ego kind of softened and I was less judgmental at myself, I was able to watch myself flow with the music and not judge myself. And I would ask my friends that were with me at the time, am I bothering you guys by dancing like this? And they were like, no, dude, like that doesn't bother me at all. I don't know why you would think that. And it was just like this a moment of epiphany that like, wow, this whole time I was just afraid of judgment of others and judgment of myself. And that's why I did not know how to dance because dancing anyone can do and
Yeah.
everyone can do. Actually, Eric Gotzi said this, and I'm not exactly sure where he found it, but that if they can talk, they can sing. If they can walk, they can dance.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
And
that's like an African proverb, but
okay,
he would know it with all of his
yeah.
mythology stuff.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
would. And when he said that, it just rang so true. And it was like, of course, we can all dance. We just have to drop that judgment and let the music do what it does. And music has been it's deep in our DNA, it's deep in our history, and the music has been a vital part of healing for, thousands and millions of years and this type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's just really great to reconnect with all of that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, you started to talk about psychedelic facilitation and psychedelic experiences. Where do you want to follow that thread? Like, where would you
Sure.
like to go with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, man. So my whole psychedelic journey started with cannabis, as it does with many of us, I'm sure, which I did not do until around college. As I've said on many podcasts before, I kind of held like this judgment against people who would use cannabis through high school, thought of them as kind of like low lives or whatever the fuck. And that was super naive of me to judge people in that way. And frankly, we shouldn't be using it that young, but it really everyone has their own path and that type of thing.
Right. Well,
But
and probably most of those people were using it unintentionally and,
mhm,
habitually and
sure.
for, I don't say the wrong reasons. Like maybe they're the right reasons, but in the wrong way. If
Hmm.
they're using it as escapism or numbing, which is probably the case. That was my case in high school. I
Hmm.
smoked a lot of cannabis in high school, but it was definitely not intentional and it definitely was not from a context that I could heal from it. It was
Hmm.
just numbing. And
Yeah,
so that's, is what it is.
totally. Yeah. So once I got to college, I feel like I had not done any drug other than alcohol like my entire life, more or less. And my body was so shocked by this chemical flowing through it that it more or less gave me like a psychedelic experience. Like, not a lot of people really think of cannabis as a psychedelic. I know it has some mild psychedelic qualities, but I was having like a full-blown psychedelic visionary state type of a situation after I smoked this weed and out of a bong. And I was like, holy shit, like this is life changing, essentially. Like I did not know my mind could project all of this colorful, vibrant, Alex Gray type geometry. It was almost like a DMT trip, if I'm being
Yeah, it
honest.
sounds
Like,
like it.
and I was just like, wow, like there are other dimensions of reality, and I need to understand this. So I became a devout cannabis researcher, someone who wouldn't really use it in a recreational sense at first. I did later. It became more recreational later as it became more habitual. But at the beginning, for like the first months and maybe even year, it was like super intentional ceremony only at night, only when I'm with my friends, only when it's safe to do so. A lot of times it was in the woods because we didn't want to get in trouble and our parents smell it and this and that. So we would literally go into the woods in this kind of shamanic setting to enjoy the cannabis and listen to music and have these deep philosophy chats and all this stuff. And as it became more and more regular over the course of years, yes, it became more recreational, and it was like, yeah, I'll smoke before watching a movie and this type of thing. But it led me down this path of understanding these psychedelics, and anything in the classification of psychedelics are different than other drugs. They do different things, and in a lot of times they've been held with sacred regard and reverence by communities that use them. So of course I bumped into learning about ayahuasca. I learned about, and I didn't do it. I just learned about it, and I learned about wachuma. I learned about peyote. I learned about magic mushrooms. Um, and eventually, of course, probably the easier one of all of those things to find as an early 20 something was magic mushrooms.
Nice.
So, a friend of mine who's really one of my best friends introduced me to magic mushrooms. And the first probably two times I did it, it was a mild kind of experience, but it was certainly interesting. No bad vibes, nothing, no scary, no bad trip, no nothing. And essentially, it was like that third time where we just took a lot more of a lot more potent shrooms that it was like a spiritual epiphany, awakening, changed my life forever type of a situation. And I became infatuated with this idea of spirituality, and it became like everything I would research. Like I was obsessed with learning spiritual traditions, Eastern mysticism. Started listening to people like Alan Watts and Tim Leary and Terrence
Yeah.
McKenna, and like just like downloading all of this stuff, and constant, just like every day, all day, listening to that stuff. And it became a large part of my awakening path was just listening to all these dudes doing these sparing kind of ceremonial journeys. And I just grew to really appreciate what psychedelics offered. And later that turned
Yeah.
into two.
Those guys have such an
Yep.
amazing perspective on psychedelics. It's just very mind expanding for me. I went through that phase as well
Hmm.
when I got into psychedelics around 2017, 18, and went through that phase where every night when I would do my stretching routine, I was listening to Terrence or Alan or whoever, and it was just mostly those two. But
Hmm.
I mean, the concepts that they throw down so effortlessly and so well articulated is just it was mind blowing for me. It was
Absolutely.
so expansive to start opening my mind and thinking in different ways, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, man. And yeah, I was about to say, yeah, later it turned into a couple ayahuasca sits, and I've sat with Wachuma one time, but really lately it's like we talked about earlier, is like it's more about integration rather than this spiritual thrill seeking, which is just a part of the path we all have to go through. It's like we're just infatuated with these states that we're able to achieve through the help of these medicines. Um, and we get so many great ideas and epiphanies and creative projects that come of them. But if you start to do too much of that and stack on too many projects, it's just none of them are going to get done. So you kind
Hmm.
of got to start to pick and choose which ones you're going to do, and that's been my learning the past few years, which is I get these great epiphanies of, oh, I should do that and I should do that and I should do that. And I try to do them all because you get this validation in these psychedelic states that like it is a great idea. So I've dabbled in so much, but I think like in this second phase of my psychedelic experience journey, it's like less journeying and more integration and really trying to hone in on what projects are your true dharma and what just seems like a fun idea, because there really is only so much time. As you're a 20-year-old, you're not really thinking about all the years in the future and
Yeah, for sure.
time and the limited nature of it. You're just like exploring everything and uh, all of everything. And I went through that for a long time and had a lot of fun with it. But as I said, yeah, I'm more in this like kind of like pulling back a little bit now. Like let's focus on only a couple of things and dial in on what I'm currently feeling is the most important creative project is music. So filmmaking is still going to be a thing in the future. I'm going to keep it in my back pocket. Um,
Music in
but
the sense of more DJ work or back with the band, or what does that look
so
like?
solo electronic music and DJing. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, super
Hmm.
cool. Well, I think that like from an integration standpoint, at least in my thought process and experience, is that psychedelics have opened me up to tapping into the frequency, the energetic frequency that is available. And the visionary states help, I think, bring it more into uh, a more a clearer picture of what is possible, or a
Hmm.
clear like visual representation of it. But for me, it kind of boils down to the energy behind it. And so with this podcast, I'm generally talking with people about spirituality, mindset, and entrepreneurship, and like all the things that you're talking about. Like you're on the more creative end of entrepreneurship in that sense that you've I don't know if you've ever worked for the man or whatever, or made a paycheck like that, like an hourly paycheck or anything, but it doesn't sound like you've done too much of that. So it's like you're an entrepreneur, you're just taking it from a much more creative place. And I think what these medicines do, at least what they've done for me, is they've allowed me to tap into in the entrepreneurship business kind of sense,
Hmm.
in the words of Napoleon Hill, that creative urge that when you get these ideas, like those are signals from universal source energy to that these are possibilities that are in your energetic being that you can go after, you can manifest, you can make them your reality. It's your definite chief aim, the vision that you want to see brought forth, all of these things. And we say, oh, we don't have infinite time. Well, you look at somebody like Prince, he buried himself in a bunker and he created thousands of songs,
Hmm.
amazing songs, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he was tapped into, in my opinion, that type of source energy where he knew exactly what he was here to do, and nothing could distract him from that. And he tapped in, and he's man, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
incomparable, epic, iconic,
Yeah.
type of stuff. So I think what's possible from that standpoint is infinite. And then also just the energy of the integrative energy, I mean, of pulling that into our very being, and like how do we express in the world, and
Hmm.
psychedelics help us see things from different perspectives so that we can release some of those limiting energies that are stuck in our chakras, like as that creative urge, the energy's coming up, it's hitting those distortions, it's hitting those limiting beliefs, the things that are holding us back, and allows us to transmute those in different ways because we're able to access them, or we become more aware of them. Like all of these things, I think it's an amazing tool. Psychedelics,
Yeah.
I mean, they're an amazing tool to get that level of perspective. But the integration into actually living and being and becoming that next version from a frequency standpoint, a
Hmm.
vibrational standpoint of being that person that is producing whatever we're producing in the world. I've always gone back to my creative expression as business because that's all I know.
Hmm.
I'm not an artist. I don't know how to create music. I don't know how to sing. I don't know any of that stuff.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's always like, what can I bring to fruition from a business standpoint? But there's a lot of layers there where integration is possible. And I think I see people out there who are not honing in on that. They're not focusing on that. They're going more leaning into, I need another psychedelic experience. And I've gone away from that as well over the past few years where I'm just like, I'm living and being a different person.
Mhm.
than I was. And that's where my integration is.
Yeah.
I'm showing up more in my community. I'm making a bigger impact on the people around me.
Mhm.
I'm creating this podcast, for example, which is just it's not a big thing, but for some people it might be. But for me, it's like we just press record, like we didn't
Mhm.
plan this out, right?
Right.
So yeah, we're creating in the moment, but it's still I don't know where you follow that thread.
Yeah, 1000%, man. And I think podcasting is such a great new art form for people that want to express themselves, but aren't, practicing music or in art or painting or pottery or all these different kind of things, which is one thing I really enjoy about it because it does still feel like I get to express those existential ideas, my psychedelic ideas, my integration ideas, in a way that's much more casual, in the flow. It doesn't take a million hours to edit a podcast the way it does a song. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
yeah, so it's just a new art form that's available to us. And I do think everyone inherently is an artist. It takes different forms for different people. I mean, for someone it could be gardening, for someone it could be cooking, for someone it could be raising their children, for someone it could be music, or podcasting or branding, building beautiful websites. Anything can be art. Even flipping burgers can be art if you bring
Right.
artistic energy into it. And that I think it gives us like a level of fulfillment that we don't find otherwise in life. And we essentially, if you go too long without some type of artistic fulfillment, it can lead to lower states of consciousness, essentially depression. Certainly I've been there, I've had depressed moments, and I always was like, well, what's wrong? What am I not doing? And as I would come back to music, or as I would come back to creating in some way, and even doing my spiritual daily sadhana, which is just meditation and yoga, I would start to get out of those states. So it's just about remembering and recalling what lights us up, what brings us creative energy, and continuing to do that. And some people are lucky enough to become like a professional artist or professional musician where they can make a living from it. But I don't think that should be everyone's goal. I think everyone should do it for themselves, do it for the act of sharing with their friends. Hey, I made this. Like, even if the audience is five people that you get to like bump your music with or like show your art piece to, that is going to fill you up too, because it's just so great to
Right.
create something and share it, even just with the most intimate relationships we have, your partner, your family, your friends. You might be a part of a community like the Temple of the Sacred Womb, like we talked about. It's just like this act of expression coming out and being received by others is just so healing. And I think everyone can start there, and that doesn't give you this big burden of like, I need to make it as the biggest artist in this field. And that's just too much pressure to put on us, and it almost could paralyze you with just the amount of work there will be to become Billie Eilish. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's
Right.
create for yourself, create for the people in your immediate vicinity, and with
Yeah. Well,
whatever feels accurate and in flow for you, you know?
when I was in LA, when I lived in LA, I tuned in with this guy, Dave Levine, who's a very successful entrepreneur there. And he had a quote, and I was actually just kind of trying to find it because uh, won't get the words exactly right. But basically, he's like, business is art, and I want to create more relevant art than the starving artist and make more money than the most successful businessman because I can bring those two together, however that quote exactly went. But
Hmm.
that's what struck me. This was like a dozen years ago or something when I heard that quote, and I've always kept it in my mind like that is where I'm striving and driving towards is like how do I create that level of abundance through the creative expression in the business world, and
Mhm.
it's it meets my sensibilities about what art is and how I can express in the world. So I don't know. I just that was a very profound thing to have in my mind as I've gone through as an entrepreneur and left corporate 10 years ago or so and have you know failed forward 1,000 times since then and
Mhm.
doing the things that I'm doing now. So it's been a magical process. It's
Abs-
I say often enough, entrepreneurship is a spiritual path, and that's what it's been for me. It puts me up against all of my challenges, limitations, all of those energetic limitations of what I think is possible or not possible, and drives me, motivates me, and pushes me to continue to come back and tap at those things, at those edges of my comfort zone where I can continue to move forward in my life and basically get over my own bullshit.
1000%. Yeah, and something that resonated there with what you said was like that quote struck you. And I think we all need to pay attention with what strikes us, and it's a different thing for a different person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
To someone, it could be a quote about something completely different, but it's like, oh, that hits, like that resonates, that feels like truth to me. And that is like a little signpost, I think, of like go in that direction and try it out. So like, pay attention
Hmm.
to what strikes you and to your core. It's a signpost towards like our soul's
Our
dharma or
soul's
whatever
call,
we want to
yeah, the
call
Dharma and
it.
the calling. Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. Yeah, and like I mentioned Napoleon Hill before, I have his Think and Grow Rich book right here on my desk. And I mean, he and like people like Neville Goddard, they were talking about these things, almost 100 years ago.
Mhm.
And here we are, like we're right back where we started. It's like we have to be reminded of these things over and over again because the concepts are pretty simple, actually. It's just the way we're programmed, we don't think in those terms. But like to your point, it's like when something strikes you, notice that. Well, what is that? It's intuition. Your intuition is giving you a sign. Your higher self is giving you a thread to follow so that you can continue to evolve as a human. You must take action and move forward in your life in whatever way. And by overcoming your bullshit, like in my terms and the way that I do it, it's like that is my path of evolution,
Mhm.
so I hopefully become a better man through that process, and I'm able to get closer to living out that dharma and that cosmic path that unfolds before me in every moment. And yeah, it's that's when I have the most peace. I
Mhm.
feel the most peace at peace in my life because I know that wherever I am, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be because I'm getting these signs, I'm getting these things that are these confirmations from the universe and where I'm at. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's cool.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I think in today's spiritual world online, people look at like these synchronicities as overabundant and almost oversaturated.
Hmm.
But um, I would like to remind people that that's a little bit because, when we get online algorithms and stuff pulled to us, things that we like and that will resonate with, and to remember that not everyone out there is getting synchronicities all day, every day. I mean, I'd say it's
Hmm.
very few percentage of humanity. I'm going to say 10%, maybe less than that. So if you are getting synchronicities and you are seeing these weird numbers and getting these messages, or you just thought about someone and now they're calling you and these types of things, like I would take that as you're on the right path. Keep going, keep digging, keep looking for deeper meaning. In
Yeah, at least take the opportunity to feel into those things and
right,
see what that meaning is for you. I went
100%.
through a phase, it must have been around 2019 or so, right after Kundalini awakening, which I don't know if we'll have time to get into all of that, but
Mhm.
I was living at the beach in Dana Point, and I would when I moved in there, I didn't know how long I was going to be able to live there. So I said, I'm going to take advantage of this. I don't want it to be 6 months later and for some reason I have to move. And then I was like, well, I lived 5 minute walk from the beach and I didn't go. So I started going down there every day. And there was a phase of about 3 months. Literally almost every time I went to the beach, I would find a feather,
Mm,
some feather from some random bird, you know?
yeah.
It was crazy. It was like literally every time in my path there would be a feather, and I started collecting them and I put them up in the door jambs of my condo, and there
Nice.
were just feathers all over the place, and it was like, I rarely find a feather these
Mm,
days, when I'm walking around, even in, like deep nature. It's like,
mm,
but at that time, it was just those synchronicities of a sign from the universe, like, okay, you know, I don't know
absolutely.
what you can read into whatever it is. If you look online and you search, well, what does it mean when I find a feather? You'll find, 100 different interpretations of that. So you can take it however you want it. But for me, it
Yeah.
was just a sign that, yeah, you're coming back to nature. You're on a path of, I think, getting to that peace and resonance with my surroundings and with my life
Mm,
that have allowed me to have a lot more confidence in where I'm at instead of being so future focused in what I'm trying to create and having being so expectation oriented and attached to some result, you know, that it just kind of like I had the sense that, wow, that it was just beautiful, you know?
absolutely. Dude, I've had so many synchronicities with birds as well.
Yeah.
Super resonate with birds. I don't know what's up with them, man. Maybe it's just how long they've been on Earth, but it seems like, yeah, when something extra special is going on, I'll see an unordinary bird. It's not just like another mockingbird or crow. It's like a hawk, a freaking thing I've never seen before, just swoops out of nowhere, or an owl is like watching me, or like this. It's just funny stuff, man. I mean, one time I was leaving a yoga retreat feeling, of course, super charged up by the yoga retreat. And a freaking hawk was flying right next to me in my window as I'm
Wow.
driving. I'm
Huh.
driving and it's like, "Meow," like right with me. And I just look over and it's like, it's out of a movie, dude. It's just like flying right with me, like dead on. I'm looking at it dead in the eye, like less than a foot away. And I was like, wow, that was magical, man. So
Yeah, how often does that happen?
exactly.
Right?
It's like, man, the bird was flying with me. I don't know, man. So it was just telling me like yoga's good, you know? Like
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think that's the point is that when you tap into these kinds of experiences and synchronicities and you feel a meaning within inside of you, like there's something to that.
yeah.
It's not always just like, oh, I'm making this shit up. It's like, well,
Mhm.
we are in living relationship with the world around us and we can be sort of sequestered in our homes and feel disconnected from it, but literally it's like the plants are creating the oxygen that we breathe and the
Mhm.
birds are singing, like they're all these animals are expressing their own dharma in the moment, and we're in symbiotic relation with symbiotic relationship with them relatively, even though we're screwing it up, but you know what I
Yeah,
mean. So
1,000%.
yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I know we could talk for much longer, Matt, and man, I really appreciate you coming on. There's so many topics that we're both mutually interested in,
mhm,
and maybe we can have another episode here in the near future and see if we can kind of follow some of those other topics up.
for
But
sure.
yeah, I appreciate you coming on here,
Yeah,
and
man.
I'd love for you to let my audience know where they can find you. I'll link it up in the description for this podcast. And
Yeah,
yeah, man, I really look forward to reconnecting with you and seeing you IRL sometime really soon.
absolutely, dude. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure hanging with you, man. Yeah, so you can find me online. My website's mattxian.com. As well on Instagram. It's Xian Archive, Xian Archive. You can also check out Time Wheel, which is where a lot of my creative projects live, and we support a lot of the other artists as well, both music and painting and animation and just anything that I think is art, even podcasts, type of thing. So Time Wheel is timewheel.net on Instagram, which is at Time Wheel. And my podcast, Xian Archive, same name as my Instagram. And also a big shout out to Sheath Underwear. That's
Yeah,
my
Sheath. Let's
my
go.
brother's company. Yeah, y'all can use promo code Time Wheel to save 20% at checkout. Love
Nice.
to support that company as it supported me so much over the years. And that's about it, man. But yeah, thanks for having me, brother. I had a great time and look forward to sharing this with the world.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Let's go. Much love, brother.
Peace.
Peace.